Hi, I'm Dr. Pamela Dragos. I'm a holistic veterinarian and I specialize in herbs as well as acupuncture and chiropractic. And today we're going to look at how to make herbal medicine. The things you need to make herbal medicine are dried herbs. This is turmeric. This is ashwagandha, for example. You get the dried herbs from places like Mountain Rose Herbs, and this is an organic dried herb. Spring Wind is another company that you can get organic dried herbs from. And the next thing you would need is a scale to weigh the herbs on. So just a simple kitchen scale with a bowl on it to put the herbs in. And then you'll need a container to put the dried herbs in after you weigh them. So I have a 32-ounce wide mouth mason jar. The other thing you're going to need to make the medicine from the dried herbs is alcohol. And you can use something like Everclear. You can use vodka, but Everclear is higher proof, and that's really what we need for a lot of these herbs. And you'll get a more accurate tincture when you use a higher proof alcohol. So Everclear is appropriate. The other thing that you can use and that I use is ethyl alcohol in bulk containers. So I've got gallon bulk containers of ethyl alcohol. So this is grain alcohol. The other thing that you need is something to grind the herb with. And you can use something as simple as a coffee grinder. Or you can use a Vitamix or a blender. So I've got a Vitamix over here. Ooh, it's plugged in. The other thing I use is a powdering machine, which is kind of like a glorified coffee grinder. I don't find it really any better than the coffee grinder or the Vitamix. So you have your herbs, you measure them on a scale, you grind them up, and then you put them in your mason jar. Funnels are nice to have. This is a nice funnel for mason jars to put your herbs in. And then you have your alcohol that you'll add to the dried herbs in the mason jar. And you'll also add some water, and you can use distilled water, you can use filtered water, you can use spring water, you can use your tap water if it's quality water. So whatever goes into your herbal tincture is what's going to come out. So the higher quality you use, the better. For measuring the alcohol and the water, you can use just a measuring cup. Or you can get fancy and geeky and get cylinders or beakers. And then once you have everything in your mason jar, the dried herb and the alcohol and water, this is kind of what it's going to look like after a while. So you've got the medicine up here and the dried herb in the jar. And you're going to let this sit in a cool, dark place for about a month. And every day you want to agitate it or shake it a little bit and get all those pieces of herb or plant in contact with the alcohol and water so that the alcohol and water can extract the chemicals. So what you're doing with the tincture is you're extracting the chemical constituents from the herb. And the chemical constituents are the medicine. And the water pulls out some of those chemicals, and the alcohol pulls out other chemicals from that herb. And then after the herb and the alcohol and water is done processing or marinating, then you'll have to separate the dried herb from the liquid, because the liquid is your medicine. And what you're going to use to separate it is cheesecloth, which is easy to get in bulk, and gloves are nice to have, and a colander. So I just use a simple colander over a collection container, and then I let it drain into another container. So I've got a colander, and I take my cheesecloth and I put it over the colander, and I'll pour my herb mixture, the alcohol, water, and dried herbs, into the cheesecloth with the colander and collection containers, and it'll drain into this container. You can then take the herb in the cheesecloth and just kind of gather it up and twist the top and squeeze your herb. Squeeze it into a container, probably with gloves on, especially if it's turmeric, because your hands will be yellow when you're done. So you can hand squeeze it into a container. That's a really simple, easy way to do it, although you don't quite get as much of the medicine out of it when you do that. So what I do is I'll use either a fruit press, which is this thing. It's a hand press, and this is actually part of the fruit press. So the fruit press, you just crank and put the herbs in here in the cheesecloth, and you crank it down to get the liquid out into another container. So that's a fruit press. And then a really fancy press, if you're doing a lot of herbal tinctures, is a hydraulic press. And then this gets a lot of the liquid out quickly without a lot of work. I like that one. And then once you get the liquid separated from the dried herb, then you're going to store it in an amber brown bottle. And you'll want to maybe use a funnel to put it in. Those are handy. And then you always want to label things. So like this mason jar is labeled with what was in it. This is curcumin, Jean Juan, and it's got the date that I made it and the percentage of alcohol that I used. You can also put the company that you got the dried herb from, and you can put the lot number also. That's good. And then when you collect your tincture, you always want to label that too. So you can do little cute labels, or you can do just plain address labels and a Sharpie, because if the tincture gets on the label, it'll erase everything. So a Sharpie is good to use. And then when you dispense your tinctures, you can use little amber brown bottles with droppers. So that's what you need to make an herbal tincture or herbal medicine. And we'll go over specific herbs, because each herb needs a different percentage of alcohol, and we'll go over how to do that. So that's how to make herbal tinctures.